In this lesson, we're going to make a list of the different actions that happen in the order that our actor does them, and then just decide what pieces of the interface that is going to react with. So we'll just go ahead, open that up, and I'm just going to kind of scrub through this as we work. So we've already done our phone animation just to kind of get an idea of how that was going to look and how that would anchor everything else. Then the next thing that we get is kind of this button push right there. Now, because of the way that we set this up in Illustrator, we were thinking that this would be the start button, and we aligned that just so that it would be right underneath the phone. But there's no reason that we can't scoot that over a little bit and just have the start button a little bit farther over to the left. So we'll probably end up moving a few things around just kind of as we figure out what motions make the most sense in this just kind of part of the course here, just figuring out that timing. So right here we can go ahead and say that he'll hit the start button. So to make that list, I've just created this little notepad document, and I'm just going to go ahead and write the first two things that have happened so far. So we'll have lays down phone and hits start. And then I'll just scoot this back over here and we'll bring it back for our next thing. And then I'm just going to scrub forward a little bit further, and we get a little button push right there. Now, that's really close to our slide to open photos kind of bar here. So maybe we could have some kind of a secondary action happen, even though a lot of things are happening here. Maybe some kind of a little alert pops up after everything has been opened, and it says, you know, maybe like there's a new picture or something like that. Now, we have that graphic earlier that has this little kind of exclamation point button. So maybe that could pop up down here, and that'll give us just an indicator that photos, because the next action is him kind of swiping through there, just kind of like that, to open those photos up. So maybe that's just an indicator that he has that notification. So maybe he clicks that, it goes away, and then he decides, okay, let's slide open the photos. So we could say hits alert and then opens photos. And one of the things that we probably need to have happen once he starts opening the photos is moving this piece away. Now, we could just scoot it out of the way to begin with, but that might kind of just give us a strange wide open space here. So maybe as he slides to open photos, just kind of right there, the interface knows that this piece needs to move out of the way so that the photos can come out of the folder. So we'll just kind of write here as a secondary action. That is the triangle dial. That's the name of that comp. We'll call it triangle dial moves away. Okay. And so now let's just kind of scrub on as we move through here. So then he enlarges a photo, kind of zooms in on that. So enlarges photo. And that may mean that any other photos that popped up might need to move. We'll just kind of see how we decide to lay those out. Then it looks like he kind of does this little action where he swipes the photo away. And then it looks like we get a totally new action just kind of as he pulls something else down there. So that means he probably needs to close all of those photos. So let's say swipes away photo to close photos. And then we get this kind of little pull down. Now the closest thing to that is going to be the maps button. So we could say that he opens the maps. We'll just go ahead and put this here. Opens maps. And then he could maybe choose one of those maps. So maybe those maps kind of come out in a list form, chooses one of those maps as he taps right there. So we're just imagining that the maps have opened and kind of brought some stuff out in front of him here. So we could call that chooses map. And then it looks like that map that opens up, he kind of rotates once he chooses it. Maybe there's some kind of a secondary action where the merges, and then he kind of zooms in and twists it. So we'll just call that manipulates map. And then he hits a button that's kind of just right there to the side of that, it looks like. And that probably means that he closed the maps. So maybe then we just see the maps kind of go back up. So closes maps. And that's going to put us just kind of right here around 800 frames. And by then, we'll really have interacted with most of the things that we have here. And pretty much everything else can just kind of be secondary. We don't have to animate every single thing. And for the purpose of this tutorial, let's just go ahead and trim our work area. We have kind of a nice stopping point just right there where he puts his hand down. So I'm just going to scrub forward to right about 810, frame 810. And we'll cut it off right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit the N key. And anytime you want your composition to be shorter based on trimming something like that, you can just right click, go to trim comp to work area, and that's going to just give you that shorter time span. So now we're just only going to be working with this much footage. So that's going to be a little bit more manageable, and we'll just animate those things in that amount of time. That's going to give us plenty of things to learn. And in the meantime, all of these other pieces will be animating as well. So I'm just going to drag this back over here so you can take a look at that list. And I've saved that inside of the reference files folder in your project files. So we're just going to kind of use this as a guide for the different things that we need as we're working. Now, one other thing that we might do is just kind of come back here to the beginning where we have that marker, and I'm just going to kind of scrub forward here, and whenever he makes these motions, let's find the exact frame that the real contact point is made, and we'll go ahead and set markers for the rest of those motions as well. So let's just kind of scrub forward, just kind of right about there. It looks like he's pushing down pretty hard right there. It's probably made good contact. So frame 121 with no layer selected just here in my main comp, I'll go ahead and hit that marker key, which is the asterisk and my number pad. And then let's go ahead and scrub forward a little bit more. And you may need to use your page up and page down keys to go frame by frame. And I'm just going to kind of go backwards here. So I'm starting at 196 right here just to kind of see what that looks like. And then it looks like right about there on 198 is really where he makes that contact. So we'll go ahead and set a keyframe there as well. And we may need to adjust that a little bit later on, but that's okay for now. Now let's go ahead and figure out where he actually starts to swipe. So right about there, we'll make another one. So that's at 247. And then he swipes until, let's say, just right about there, kind of stops. So that's when the action needs to stop, so we can put another one there. So any kind of action that has a really obvious stopping point like this, where he quits holding his hand to the table, that's where we'll want to set probably another set of markers. And I'm just going to use page down to keep moving forward. And this is the point kind of where we got our difference map from, because his hands go all the way down in his lap. And we'll just kind of keep moving forward and kind of back that up a little bit right there. So right about there, he makes contact with the table. We'll go forward a little bit further just to make sure. So right about here, frame 309, we'll set another. And then we have another kind of one of those same sort of actions where he begins to drag out. So we'll need to set another frame for when he finishes dragging. So let's just kind of go forward a little bit. That looks like that's probably going to be on about frame 328, maybe 330. Let's go with 330 on that one. So go ahead and set a marker there. And then we'll just kind of keep moving forward here, see what happens next. We're just kind of moving really slowly just because we're looking at this in such high quality. Then the hands go down into the lap again. Then we get the little swipe. So let's figure out where exactly the contact is made. So it looks like right about there is probably where his hand actually hits the table. So we'll go there on 407. And then we'll go forward just to swipe that away. Now this is probably going to have a little bit less of a defined time simply because of the way his hand exits the table kind of indicates that there's some momentum by the way you slide that. So I'm not going to put a closing marker on that one just yet. We'll just see how that looks once we get to it. Just kind of get a feel for it. Now definite contact is made right about there. So that's going to be on frame 475. We'll go ahead and add another marker. Then we have a really obvious pull down until, let's see, I'm going backwards a little bit here. Right about there, 491, we'll set another marker. So that, he kind of is lingering there, but he stopped moving. So that's a great time to just go ahead and set that marker to help you figure out where you need to kind of stop that. And in the end, we may change that up a little bit, but this is just a good roadmap for us to use for now. So now he's going to start interacting with those maps. So we'll just kind of go forward a little bit more. And we get, looks like him choosing the map here is kind of what we wrote down. So we'll just go ahead and figure out exactly where that happens. And we're getting a little bit behind there. Just 1 second. I'll scrub backwards towards that. Okay, so looks like just right about there, 549. So we'll go ahead and add a marker here as well on 549. And you can see how this is just kind of a delicate process. If you watch this through and try to add the markers as you watch it, I guarantee all your markers are going to be a little bit off. They're going to be just a little bit late. That's just kind of how it works. So I prefer just to do it as I scrub. So right about here we get the contact for the twist. So I'll go ahead and set another marker right there. Then we begin to twist to right about, looks like right about there. And that rest of that twist, we'll just go ahead and leave that. We won't have that continued as a twist because his hand kind of goes backwards the other direction. And maybe if we want to add that secondary motion in, we can. Then we have right about here, we close the map, so I'll set another marker there. And then we go back. And as I was scrubbing through that, I noticed that the difference mat in a few places needs a little bit of tweaking. So just kind of mostly here at the beginning, just we get a little bit of some strangeness with the fingers. So if you want to go in and tweak that some more, you certainly can. I probably will tweak this just a little bit in between our lessons here, just to get that looking a little bit better. And one of the other things that I'm noticing is just right here at the beginning, when we set our phone down, if you just scrub really slowly, we can actually see through the phone at that point. And so that's a really good indicator that our difference mat is working, but we don't want it to be working at that point. So what I'm going to do is just kind of scrub forward until right about here, which is where some of that animation is going to begin. It's actually going to begin on that marker, so we know that's a great place to start that. So I'm just going to back up one frame before that begins. And this part of our footage that has the difference mat on it, we can just trim. So I'm just going to trim that to that point. And now when I scrub backwards, what we'll actually be seeing is that piece of footage underneath. And so we won't have the phone cut out. But keep in mind that even though we can see the interface on top of his hand right now, nothing will be showing at that point. We'll be animating this to all pop out of the phone later on. So it's okay that everything is visible right now because it won't be later on. So don't give that too much thought. We'll be fixing that as we go and syncing up those animations with these markers. So in this lesson, we learned how to make that action list, just kind of figuring out what's going to be happening in our shot. Then we went through and set markers on those actions just so that that's going to make our animation that much bit easier later on once we start adding those animations to our shot.